All right, so let's look at chapter 4, Becoming Wise. So what I've done here on this particular one, here's how the chapter breaks down. There are 4 different segments to it, and that is, there's a discipline that's involved. There's also a love of learning. That is something we are losing today in society, a love of learning. By the way, this is one of the most practical chapters that we have thus far. All of the ones that we've seen beforehand, I think they're great, but they just lay the groundwork, defining what is wisdom, qualities of wise people. But on this one, we have the qualities of wise men and growing in wisdom, and it has a lot of practical application, particularly regarding child rearing, and that's what we're going to see here in just a moment. So here's how the chapter breaks down, or the first one. In my mind, I didn't see us, and I didn't anticipate us going past number 1, discipline. So what do we mean by discipline when we speak about becoming wise? What do I mean by discipline, for example? Okay, teaching and reaction. How about correction? Correction. Okay, what kind of disciplines are there? Self, that's the number 1 I think about. Self-discipline. Here is where we're going to see a major failure in people today. Lack of self-discipline. The world belongs to the disciplined, the people who can control themselves and discipline themselves to do what is right and to have the schedules maintained as they should. People are not here because of lack of discipline. People do not rise and study because of lack of discipline. They do not curtail their tongue because of lack of discipline. All of these things are self-discipline, and we have to learn from those who are disciplined themselves, and the world belongs to the self-disciplined. All the greats of yesteryear who have led us in all kinds of technology advances, or engineering advances, or medical advances, are people who are disciplined to study. It can even go down to the point of discipline to exercise. You have to have self-discipline. Jan? Well, I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't think 5 days is do it for me. Okay, well, for some of us, we're a little slow learners, I guess. Now, don't punch him. She's going, I see, Ann, this is why I want you to be up to the front so I can see what you're doing. So I see what Jan's doing. She punches Dan. Like, hey, don't. Yeah. That way, that's a good striking distance. Well, for some of us, not Jan maybe, it takes a lot more time than 5 days. It takes me at least 30 days to get something done as far as ingraining a habit. So that's 30 days at least for me. But be that as it may, it takes us some time to habitually do something. So self-discipline, how about disciplining children? Disciplining children is going to come under the same rubric right here in this chapter. So let's think about discipline. And so here's how the discipline area breaks down. So it begins with, number 1, a hate. All right, begins with a hate. And the Bible's pretty clear about this hate. And how do we learn discipline? We learn it from the different areas that we have listed on the screen there in front of you. So let's look at discipline for just a moment. This is, number 1, hate. And the first passage of our attention is Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 9. Hebrews 1 and verse 9. I'll let you look at that one if you have your Bible. Hebrews 1 and 9. It's right here in the front. Yep, there you go. So discipline begins with hate. But there's a good hate. There's something that we should hate. The things that we should not hate. So someone read out that passage, Hebrews 1 and 9. Interesting to have it put that way, isn't it? That Christ, regarding him, you've loved righteousness at the same time, what? hate iniquity. There's something to hate. You hate iniquity. So that's what this is all about, hating iniquity, hating that which is evil. So let's just kind of plunge into this from Solomon's viewpoint for just a moment. Let's think about this one. This is in Proverbs 15 and 33. Proverbs 15 and 33. Here the statement is very plain. The fear of the Lord is the training for wisdom. But what is the fear of the Lord exactly? We'll go to Proverbs 8 and verse 13. Proverbs 8, verse 13. What is the fear of the Lord? So we've talked a lot about fear of the Lord, but here we're going to have it defined for us. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil, hatred of pride, of arrogance, the way of evil, perverted speech, I hate. This is the beginning of wisdom. It begins with a disposition of the mind that you love truth and you hate error. I think that frequently we are too much, I would say, we lack the hate that we need for error. This is one area that I think maybe perhaps our convictions can be bettered, and that is by loving truth, loving what is right, but at the same time, it also engenders hate. Yes, sir. That's correct. And we've talked about that one before, and so because we've had that in the first 3 chapters, that's a good way to summarize it right there. It's a respect for God, and it is a trembling to recognize I'm going to be standing in the presence of God at the very last, and I'm going to give answer to how I've behaved. 2 Corinthians 5 and 10, Romans chapter 14, verses 11 and 12. I'm going to stand and give answer to all that I have done. That should be inspiring in us some hatred of evil because we know that it destroys us. Let's think about these passages here. This is Proverbs 3 and 7. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. Let's pick up this is the next passage. I'll let one of you read this one. This is Proverbs 14. We're going to jump back and forth for a few moments. Proverbs 14 and verse 27. All we're doing is underscoring the point here. Proverbs 14. I see you're turning to it, so I'll let you get to it before we read it. And 27. The fear of the Lord is the fountain of life, departing from the snares of death. So there we have a pretty clear statement here that we need to recognize that there is something that's going to take us to death, spiritual death, and sometimes physical death as well. How about 16 and 6, Proverbs 16 and 6. And by the fear of the Lord, by the fear of the Lord, that's right. Good read. That's right. That's okay. You know what? It's okay. It finishes it up. The fear of the Lord, men depart from evil. That is, you avoid evil. So the fear of the Lord involves an engendering of hatred in our hearts for that which is evil, that which is error. This is why, now let me just say this regarding preaching or standing for truth. This is why preachers need to point out error. Because you cannot really love the truth without at the same time hating error. And it has to be pointed out. People do not understand it unless sometimes you do point it out. But loving the truth involves the other side of the coin, and that is you have to hate evil, error, anything that goes away and astray from the truth. That's why preachers point out, here's the truth, but here's error. And we're going to talk about that in our sermon period. This is the 4th lesson on forcing God's hand. Oh, did you need a book? I'm sorry. Okay. I don't know. I haven't checked the wording on it, whether in the original language the same wording. But even if it is, the idea obviously, as you pointed out, when Jesus said you have to hate father and mother, so forth, the obvious meaning is to love them less. And that's the meaning of it, whether or not the word literally is the same or not. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's good. It's a good point. Yeah, any other question on that? But it does point out what we need to avoid, and there are things that we must avoid. So let's notice a couple of other texts real quickly. This is Job chapter 28 and verse 28. Depart from evil is understanding. Let's just turn that around for a moment. What is lack of understanding? Practicing evil. Practicing evil or not avoiding evil or not being afraid of evil is lack of understanding. Isn't that pretty clear? Pretty simple, isn't it? That's how he puts it. So here's the illustration he gives. He gives a couple of illustrations. Number one is children, and the number two is liquor. Think about children for a moment. The children's mind, he says, and he is himself a psychologist, he says a child's mind is basically, I think he uses the word primitive. That is, it doesn't have all the development yet, and we know that they don't develop as they should in young men until about 25 years old. That's right. Isn't that right, Jim? About 25? But as a child, as just an infant child, they have no real conception of how things can harm them and making wrong judgments. So they don't have really that conception. So what we do is when we try to train children, we're trying to train them so that they will understand that there are wrong things to do, and sometimes that involves inflicting some pain on the proper points of the body. That is on the little bottom. That is simply to say they have to understand that there is pain involved in choosing wrong. And spanking is not child abuse. Spanking is what Solomon admonishes us to do throughout the book of Proverbs, and we'll see some of that in just a moment. So the child learns only by those kinds of choices that they make, and they have to have what are called consequences for crossing the boundary. They have to have consequences. If they don't have consequences for making wrong choices, they don't learn to make right choices. And those consequences must involve some kind of pain. That's the way life is. So a child coming near a fire, grabbing a hot coal. I had a professor tell me, he said, I just let my child do it. That'll be the last time they do it. They never will do it again. They learned now. Now, you wouldn't do that at everything. If the child kind of waddles out in the street, you're not going to say, you're going to learn something here. But they learn from those things, and that's how they learn. And the same thing is the case with a lot of things. You have to let them be children, and they learn from pain how to avoid those dangerous situations. And the same thing is the case when you discipline a child, and that's exactly what we're doing when we have children in the home. So that's how this Walter Porter, who brings it out, he gives that good illustration regarding children. So here's another thing. By the way, I couldn't help when I read this, I couldn't help but think about, a lot of people would say, I remember in school at Denver Alternative and also in juvenile detention, they would say, because they're all in there for one thing or the other, but they all have the one common denominator, which is what? But what are they doing? Well, what are they all doing, though? It doesn't matter what crime they commit, but they're all doing something else. Well, no, what are they practicing in school, out of school? What are they doing? They're all smoking weed. Everybody's on there for weed. Everybody. You don't have anybody that's in there that's not there for weed. Not anybody. I don't care whether they are robbing a store or getting in a fight or whatever, and whether they're just wearing their pants down to their knees, it doesn't matter. It's just they're all doing weed. And they say, Mr. Lockwood, God made weed. You ever heard that? God made weed. Well, God made petroleum and gasoline also, but that doesn't mean we ingest it. It just, and he brings that out here. Just because it's made by God doesn't mean that we have taken away our inhibition about what is right and what is wrong and doing things that are good and doing things that are bad. It just doesn't follow. But that's when they start saying that, I said, you know what? I can tell you've been smoking weed, because that's the silliest little argument I've ever heard. Yeah, and he's talking about food in that passage. Yeah, food, yeah. That's 1 Corinthians 6. But all things, that is not everything, is made to ingest in your body. Yeah. So this is the same thing. So children don't understand that. I remember when I was in high school, we were in a shop class. I don't remember much from shop class, but I do remember this. Because I can't work on a motor today, but they said, Bill, go get some gasoline. So I was going to siphon some out of my tank out of the parking lot. And you know what I did? Yeah, I thought, oh, no. You know what? When they asked me to siphon after that, I says, no, thank you. It just made me so sick. I was sick for 2 days. I thought, I learned right now that I cannot ingest gasoline. But the good side of it was to kind of help it out. I ate a bunch of chocolate cake. They said, eat a bunch of cake. I said, I'll eat chocolate cake. So I ate a bunch of chocolate cake to help. But anyway, I was still sick. So it's the same thing as the case regarding children and learning, and there has to be some pain inflicted in order that they can learn. And the problem with now, number 2, liquor, by the way, it's always used in Solomon's writings in a negative connotation. It's always used that way. It is never used in a positive. As a matter of fact, in the Bible as entire, it's never used in a positive sense. It's always something to be warned about. It is never held up as something that we can do. Never. Anyway, so regarding liquor, what happens with liquor, Solomon describes. So this is, let's see, well, this is the next page. But the point simply is that liquor is that which takes your mind and makes it like a child's mind, that you have no inhibitions about certain things, and everybody knows that to be the case. It takes you back to childhood stage when you have been inebriated. Isn't that right, Jim? Not only reflective, your reflections or your responses to emergency situations while you drive, all of that. Jim has, for many years, he of course tested people who are, I guess drinking and driving, or tested their liquor level or whatever. I don't know exactly how he did it. Breathalyzers, or no, it was, Intoxilizer. Well, what? Okay, intoxilizer, see? And it was just way beyond me, but the point is that liquor destroys our inhibitions and makes us more like a child, in which we have the inhibitions we learned are discarded, and we do things that we should not do. We say things we would not say. Are we responsible for that? What do you think, Jim? Absolutely. It's your choice to do those things. That's the same thing I tell the kids at school regarding weed. You know, they treat weed the same way as they do alcohol in driving. They treat it the same way. People who are, because it destroys your reaction time and your inhibitions, and it makes you a different person, so to speak. And so they treat it the same way as alcohol. So when I talked to a policeman in Colorado, he says, yeah, when they pull people over, and they do the breathalyzer or whatever they do, and to detect it, he said, they treat it all the same way. Isn't that amazing? But our society just has destroyed any kind of understanding on that, because we want so badly to have a liquor bar in the church house almost. So I say that tongue in cheek, but you know, that's what people are, just about. Well, that's what the examples that Solomon uses. So let's look at a couple of texts here. So this is Proverbs. Well, okay. We'll start on this. This is page 62 in my book. I'm not sure what page it's in your book. Let's see. Well, it's about 1 John 4:18. Word passage. You learn from experience, and that's the idea. You learn from experience. So we're coming to, okay, how do you learn? How do you learn discipline? That's the number 2. Number 1, fear has to do with punishment, 1 John 4:18. So you learn by, number 1, experience. You learn by experience that is something going to harm you. Same thing regarding learning consequences. You learn by consequences. That's how you learn to make correct decisions. So this is on page 62 in my book, and he talks about this. This is such a good paragraph. I want to read it to you. The Lord is the ultimate avenger of all wrongdoing. Fear of the Lord then means to abhor wrongdoing and its consequences. It is developed by recognizing the harm produced. It encourages internalized control, self-discipline. This orientation of the mind enables wisdom to begin. You only begin there. It's an orientation of mind that you learn to begin to develop wisdom. Developing a healthy respect for the consequences of wrongdoing serves to bottle up and restrain behavior. It captures and contains the raw energy of a free life. It creates self-control by purifying and cleansing us of our natural wildness. It encourages humility, which opens the mind, making it more receptive to education. This purging of impulsiveness is like plowing a field to make it suitable for growing crops. It is like refining ore in the furnace to purify the raw materials so it can be shaped into useful products. It is like the pain of surgery that cuts out the diseased tissue. Punishment is designed to correct. Its purpose is to improve and make a person better. To correct someone is an act of kindness as an expression of love. All right. Anybody disagree with that comment or add to it? So let's think about 2 or 3 passages that show us about that correction. And this is from Proverbs chapter 1, verse 23. Proverbs 1 and 23. If you give heed to my reproof. Sometimes correction simply involves verbal reproof, that is, correcting someone. Here's the next one, Proverbs 6 and 23. Reproofs of instruction or discipline is the RSV. Reproofs of discipline are the way of life. That's how we learn. All right, let's look at Proverbs 10 and 10. I really like this one. I think he uses here a translation that is different than probably anybody is here using. Proverbs 10 and 10. You know what? And that's, if you wink, what does that mean to wink at something? That means to what? Say again. Yeah, turn a blind eye to it, to wink at it. That's okay. That is nothing. I'm not going to pay attention to that. Here's how the New American Bible reads. He who winks at a fault causes trouble, but he who frankly reproves promotes peace. Now, we're going to come back to that idea in just a moment. 10 and 10. We're going to 15 now, 15 and 31. Let's look at 15 and 31. You have to learn to take reproof, that is correction. That would be verbal correction in these cases. And you gain understanding. 19 and 25. Now let's go to 19 and 25. Here's a good one also. This one is so simple, but at the same time so bold. Who is that one? Proverbs 19:25. Yes, might a scoffer, yeah. That's talking about discipline. That is discipline, you know. And the scoffers don't learn, but he who heeds admonition, or rather has understanding, he will understand knowledge if you reprove a wise man. So a wise man can take reproof. The point is, a wise man takes reproof and corrects his way. But those who are scoffers are not so easily taught, are they? All right, here's one, Proverbs 20 and verse 30. Stripes that wound cleanse away evil. Strokes reach the innermost part. The idea is sometimes not just verbal reproof, but actually physical correction. Wise people learn from it, physical correction. Say it goes to the heart because they take it to heart. The fool is the one who does not take those things, and this is actually the beginning of wisdom, learning this self-discipline. Here's another one. This is 25 and verse 12 of Proverbs. As an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. Proverbs 25 and verse 12. And then 27 and 6, as we're going down the list of, and we're going to go to 27, then we're going to go to 28. All right, what does that mean? Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Well, what do we really hate? When people say such great things to our face, but what do we, I feel, what's that after that? That's right. That's right. Correct. That's a good point. That's not why you go to the doctor or something. You're doing great. So what do we really despise though? And this passage really gets to it. And that is people are very sweet to your face and say nice things to you, but you know what they're saying over here. We say behind your back. So I've had people come to me before and say, Bill, so and so is not your friend. So okay, yeah. I've had people say that many times in my life. I thought, well, this one, is a good friend of mine. He's, always, and someone came to me and said, I know some things. I don't need to tell you all about it, but so and so is not your friend. Well, okay, I'll take a word to the wise on that one. Be careful about what I say, what I do. Have you ever had that? You've had that, haven't you? I know all of us have had that. It's sad, isn't it? But that's the way it is. And that's, I think, what he's getting to here. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but profuse are the kisses of an enemy. They're going to be everything's happy, but boy, they're not so happy behind you. Then 28 and 23. He that rebukes a man afterward shall find more favor than he that flatters with the tongue. All right, afterward. So here is here's the illustration that Walter Porter uses. It's almost humorous, for example. So he says, gentle forms of correction, they're always helpful, even though they're painful at first. Because I don't like him saying that to me. I don't like the way she said that to me. I don't like when she says this. But he says, for example, if I am going about ignorantly committing some offense, say, for example, in the way I look, a friend will inform me to help me correct it. Then we can all relax and enjoy life more. But if I go around, just a disheveled way or smelling bad, no one says anything, you're not really doing that person a favor, are you? No, you want, okay, hey, that makes sense, Jim? You look puzzled on that one. You're talking about faithful are the wounds of a friend. A friend will correct you and help you to learn to do better. But those who are not interested in that, they will smother you with kisses, but they are going to be on the other side saying, well, that's true too. Yeah, but I think this is talking about personal relationships in how you involve and interact with people, not necessarily taking a stance on the truth or something. That's my idea of it, at least. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's right. And that's the same thing Solomon is saying right here. If you're a good friend, I'll put it to you right in the chest, right? But, if you're not a good friend, okay. So everybody has been around people like that. I would like to tell so-and-so about such and such, but, I'm afraid. But I'm afraid what? I'm going to hurt their feelings. We've had things like that, haven't we? Okay, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt their feelings. I don't want to say anything because, and then pretty soon, okay, something happens, and then we say, I wish I had said something, right? I wish I had said something because now things all hit the fan, and boy, I tell you what. Or, other people say something in a very mean way, and I thought, I wish I had helped them out to begin with. So that's the point here that he's making. So wound sometimes has to come. The entire point, however, is we have to have self-discipline, and discipline also involves sometimes, and most frequently, if not all time, pain. Pain involves pain. If you're going to correct me, if you're going to say something to me that, okay, it's going to involve pain. Okay, you missed that, Bill. It's not right on this one. Well, that involves initially some pain, doesn't it? Sure it does. I don't want to be wrong about things, or I don't want someone to say, hey, Bill, you know what? You have not taken a bath in a week, and I can tell. Well, that's going to be painful to hear, but I need that. And then we can all relax and get along better. So the point is, say something if you need to, but of course be gentle in so doing, right, Jim? Gentleness, that's Jim's motto, gentleness. Is that right, Joy? She is not saying anything. It is a great motivator. Pain is a great motivator. And sometimes it comes from friends, doesn't it? It comes from family members, right? Yep, that's just a good way to put it. It's just, yeah, Carissa is pretty straightforward. This is what it is. Now, that's not to say that every time we think about something, we have a feeling about something, we should blurt it out. That doesn't mean that. But if there's something that can help someone else, then we're doing a disservice if we don't speak up and say just something about it. And we're talking about personal relationships, Jim. Well, and not only that, but just in personal relationships, about some people can be obnoxious with what they say or what they do. And, you're helping people say, think about this. Yes, sir. Other people. That's a good point. In Matthew 7, verses 1 and 2, judge not that you be not judged, for with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And the point is that we become sometimes, we don't want to be too critical, and maybe should have added this, don't become so critical that we're not willing to stand to the same measuring rod that we're willing to put to someone else. And frequently that's what we do. I'm going to put a measuring rod to you in your behavior, what you say, how you act, all those things, and yet I'm not willing to stand to it myself, the same measuring rod. And that's the point there in Matthew 7. Not to say don't make assessments. Not to say you can't make assessments. Everybody makes judgments. Right, that's right. Well, everybody makes judgments all day long. You have to make judgments. You have to make judgments about everything. You make judgments about your children, what they do, what they say, or where they've been. You make judgments about the schoolroom, the classroom. You make judgments about people you hire, whom you're not going to hire. You're making judgments about all of those things. Same thing in the church. We make assessments, that is assessing whether someone's faithful or not. In the Old Testament, that's exactly, I will say this, in the olden days, preachers would, by habit, go around house to house, and they would do a test twice a year. Thomas Campbell grew up this way. He would go to the houses of every member in the church, and he would do a test. It was not just a visit. It was a test to see how well they were studying and how much they were advancing in Bible knowledge. And he would test them. He would go in there and give them a test. Well, that's an assessment. That's an assessment. Isn't it? Sure. So we all make assessments, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Matthew 7 is, don't make an assessment with a measuring rod to which you're not willing to stand yourself. Yeah, we're not going, that's what we call hypocrisy. Yes, sir. Yeah, your attitude has a lot to do with it. Your attitude has much to do with it. Any other thoughts on that? Everybody looks like they're really thinking hard about some of this, like, whoa, I've never heard this before. All right, let's look at, this is the next page. This is Proverbs 3 and 11. Proverbs 3 and 11. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loves, he corrects, even as a father the son in whom he delights. All right, can you think of the correction of the Lord? That would be in life, not talking about final punishment. What is the correction in life that the Lord gives? That's a good way to put it. So you think about David for a moment. David, of course, grievously sinned, erred, and he was corrected by the Lord, and the Lord told him it was going to be fourfold punishment, and he suffered the rest of his life. But he was humble enough that he recognized that it was from God that he was going to have disruption in his house from now on. And that's exactly what happened. David suffered the rest of his life for the mistakes that he made, but he recognized it was a punishment of the Lord, and that was what it was announced by Nathan the prophet when he came to him. That's how God corrects us. We make mistakes. We make bad decisions, bad judgment calls, or we make we do things that are absolutely sinful and turning our face against God for a while. Then, okay, what happened? Well, we suffer for it. But God has designed the system so that it's corrective of your behavior. But what happens? Well, many times people say, well, I don't like it. I don't like this, what happened. I don't like this, the punishment that came to me. I don't like how people are treating me, blah, blah, blah. I don't like it. So they get mad at the Lord. But the Lord has designed these corrective measures for us in order that we might learn. So that's something else to think about. Let's also notice about this. This is getting into the children now. Oh, I'm over time. Well, we're about to get to children right here, letter E. But children, he says quite a bit about, what is that famous passage in Proverbs? David, what is it? Huh? That's right. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Spare the rod. Huh? Well, don't we live with that every single day? We do. That's right. They think discipline is a bad thing. They think Dr. Spock does better than Solomon. All right. I'm sorry, kept you over time.